it is going to be my first review on my gaming channel. Yes, my first review. The original reason I started a gaming channel, and I'm getting around to it finally. Now, this game came out in the mid-90s, and I didn't have a chance to play it when it came out because the system was kind of expensive back in the days. It was for the Sega CD, and of course I was deprived at the time. So I didn't have a Sega CD, but all these years later, I finally have one. I literally just finished it last week. I started it up, and it truly has held for the test of time. It's still a great game, and I played it start to finish without stopping. And that game is Snatcher for the Sega CD. Let's drop the game. Now, Snatcher is a game that originally came out in 1988 in Japan, 1992 for the PC Engine, and 1994 for the Sega CD. It was made by Konami and was directed by Hideo Kojima, who of course did the Metal Gear Solid series. And it is a game that is loosely based on the Blade Runner movie. Now, the difference is you are not known as replicants, they're known as snatchers. You're not a runner, you're a junker. But other than that, like, the idea behind them, the backdrop and everything is very reminiscent of Blade Runner, the movie, which is, of course, a great movie, and that, of course, makes this a great story. You play as Gillian Seed, and you have lost your memory along with your wife, and you're both trying to reclaim your memories and try to figure out why you are doing what you're doing. And basically, at this point in the story, they are separated because they don't know exactly why to be together, because they can't remember why they were in love in the first place. Now, there are many other characters in there. There is, later on, your sidekick, who an engineer gives to you, and his name is, the sidekick, of course, is Metal Gear, which later on, if you play the Metal Gear on the PlayStation 3, the sidekick in that one is called MK2, and that is basically the spiritual successor to Metal Gear out of Snatcher, and it's a little homage to this game. And the thing about this game is the world that you are in is, like I said, very Blade Runner-like, but that doesn't mean it's an exact copy. The backdrop for this is basically futuristic, flying cars, big buildings, technology is there, but that doesn't mean that technology is there to help you. You still have to use your detective skills to actually find what you're looking for at the first place. Nobody's there holding your hand like we do in games today, but you have to look at items, investigate items, check items, use items. These are your commands that you have throughout the game. And the thing about this game is you don't always open up all options if you look at an item or you ask a question once. Sometimes you need to ask a question several times. Sometimes you need to show a picture several times to somebody else to see if it triggers their memory. The one annoying thing I did get out of there, and it was a pain in the ass sometimes, is sometimes you would have to look at an item twice, then show it to somebody a couple times, then investigate the item, and then examine the item, and you would have to do several different things, one right after another, to be able to open up an option that wasn't originally there. And there was no way for you to actually know to do this without just trial and error. So there's many frustrated times where I was clicking look, and then going through that. Now, not to say that that actually ruined the game in any way, shape, or form for me. It actually made it kind of interesting. It made it a little bit refreshing, the fact that the game didn't hold my hand from point A to point B. Like I said, like happens in all the games that we have today, or most of the games that we have today. Now, within this world, the there aren't that many CG moments. That's to say that most of it is a backdrop and a picture. Like, your picture is going to be at the top of the screen, and down at the bottom are going to be smaller boxes of which characters are interacting at the time. During these moments, there's not text, there's actual voice acting. Now, the voice acting is done really well. I actually enjoyed a lot of the voice acting. I didn't find any of it difficult to listen to. I didn't find any of it unbelieving. And it was paced at a right kind of spacing in between acts or areas where you didn't get tired of reading all these lines, because there's a lot of reading, there's a fair amount of reading, but it wasn't unbearable. But the voice acting kind of broke it up inside of these acts. And just to bring that up, the game is broken up into, I believe, 4 or 5 different acts, and each act ends after, an investigation or two, and opens up with a recap of the original act before it. And this is kind of nice to see, and it's voiced by, usually I believe the chief is doing it, and he voices over what happened in Act 1 if you're in Act 2. And to speak of all the locations that this game actually lets you go into. Now, you are able to travel between locations with a speeder, and you basically pick that you want to go to Gillian's apartment, or you want to go to Junker HQ, and you would basically get in your vehicle and you would basically fly there, and then you would find yourself in front, and you would have to open up the door, look at the door, open the door, and go inside if you had, the keys, or if you disabled the lock, or whatever. Now, there are, I don't know, maybe a dozen different locations that you get to jump through, and they don't get tiresome or really boring because you're doing something different every time. Like, inside of Junker HQ, there's the front office, there is the chief's room, there is the engineer's room, there is the shooting range, and there is the detective's room, and finally the computer room, where Jordan is stored. And there is several different instances where you need to use Jordan to be able to continue your investigation. Now, Jordan is kind of an interesting part of the game. Like, one aspect, you get basically from an exotic dancer, which we'll speak about in a few, you will get an actual description of somebody that she saw talking to a character that has passed away. Sorry, spoiler, should have said that before. Too bad. Anyways, you get to basically see that there is you get to go to Jordan, and you actually get to build the face according to the way that she described him. And at the end, you actually use this as a profile to put inside the computer to basically scan the faces that are known in the database, and it brings up 2 different faces, and you have to investigate both of them. Very interesting. And you basically go to their apartments, their houses, and you have to go, you have to actually go in there and find out where they actually live. Like, one person kind of gives like a rough estimation of where his apartment is because it's kind of run down. Another person has an exact destination of where his apartment is. Now, basically, you're going there to see if there are clues, to see if they're a snatcher. And I'm not going to ruin it, what you're going to be looking for, because you guys are going to have to play it. Now, when you're actually going through these rooms, like, not everything is apparent. Sometimes you have to walk out, and then you hear a noise, and you have to walk back in, and you have to. Sometimes you use Metal Gear to scan for Snow 9, with several different things. And talking about Metal Gear is with you through this whole entire thing, and it's a good thing because he works as your vid phone, because there's telephone numbers that sometimes get flashed on the screen. Sometimes there's telephone numbers written on bottles. Sometimes there's written on notes. Have no idea. And the thing that I like about this game is that it doesn't hold your hand, like I said. So I constantly found myself going and asking Metal Gear, what's that number? And just as I would switch over to the next page, my somtimers would kick in and I'd forget, and I'd have to switch back and ask about the number again. And of course, Metal Gear would pipe off with another, like, oh my god, did you forget? Or something like that. I can't remember, but it was the interaction between Metal Gear and Gillian is very interesting and can be funny at times. And he is used to be able to be your vid phone, your scanner, your sound detector, and your save. And one thing I could tell you is save often on this game. It's not necessarily a bad thing if you don't, but it's really nice. It saves you sometimes maybe about 10 minutes of text, which can be kind of a pain in the ass. Now, speaking of different kind of worlds or different kind of things that you can do inside this world, if you do not look several times at something, you will lose not important parts, but certain nuances in the story that actually kind of open up the world and draw you a little bit closer. Like if you are out by, I believe it's basically a public area with restaurants that you're trying to get, this is where you basically get to one place which is called Outer Heaven. We'll get back to that in a minute, but if you don't stop and investigate the area several times, you miss a pizza dealer who does Kobe pizza. And it's funny interaction between Metal Gear, Gillian, and the pizza dealer, which is kind of funny during the time. But getting back to Outer Heaven is a location where you literally have to put on a mask because there's such sketchy characters that they're like, we don't want these people in, or at least we don't want to know what their faces are, even though they are our patrons. And inside there's an exotic dancer, and you get to go question her about somebody that she saw. You get to order, I believe it was buffalo, which is like an extinct item, and like really like it's like the black market meat. You're not supposed to have it. Like, shh, don't talk about the buffalo. So you literally, you can eat it, you could do certain things, and you can leave quietly, or you could do what I did, and I just got kicked out. I was just like, here's my badge, I'm a cop, and they kicked me out. And they wouldn't let me back in. I was like, you bastards. And so you actually get to follow through with this story, and there's several different houses you need to go to. Your detective skills, you really have to kind of think like a detective and kind of look at everything, try to use everything, try to talk to people multiple times, walk in and out of rooms, and if you don't, it's not tedious really, it's just the repetition. And if you don't like repetition, then I wouldn't play this game necessarily, because there are times where you have to ask a question a couple times. And this is coming from somebody who hated Oregon Trail with a passion. I hate that game, but I love this game. So at least Oregon Trail didn't turn me off from this game. Now, getting to the actual gameplay, earlier I talked about inside Junker HQ was a shooting range. And basically that is what it is. Now, the majority of this game is text-based, and you control your actions via text. But there are instances, like you get to hone your shooting skills with either the light gun or the D-pad, which the D-pad was a pain in the ass, let me tell you, especially towards the end. But you can basically do shooting on the screen with a light gun or your D-pad. And there's not a lot of these scenes, maybe half a dozen, maybe a little bit more, but they are fun. They break up the pace of you investigating and listening to sounds and investigating and checking pockets and looking at models, and that makes it very unpredictable because it doesn't really announce when these scenes are going to be coming at you. And sometimes it's snatchers, sometimes it's their robot minions, and sometimes it's your wife. I'm not going to let you know what's going on there, but yeah, you would have to play to see. Now, this game isn't a particularly long game. I believe I beat it in like 12 hours or so, but I wasn't bored during any of it. It was on the higher end of difficulty just because it doesn't hold your hand, and you might be having to search a couple tutorials online to find out what part you're missing. There was a particular part that I got lost on with a flashlight and exactly what I needed to do with a flashlight, and what I needed to spot and what I didn't need to spot. Also, the use of Jordan, which is the crime computer. There were parts where you were supposed to look up a specific term using Jordan, and I had no idea what the fuck I was looking for. I was completely lost. I had no idea. I mean, hats and kudos off to you that played it back in the day when the internet wasn't around and there wasn't these goddamn tutorials, because holy shitballs, I had no idea what the hell I was looking for. But the story really had some good twists in it, and the characters were very colorful. The gameplay was broken up correctly with acts and reading text and then dialogue and then shooting sequences, and changing locations really kind of helped the pace of the game and didn't make it seem so monotonous. So as far as I'm concerned, I would play this game again. It is awesome. I enjoyed it from start to finish. I couldn't say more about it, but it's definitely well worth the look. Anyways, I want to thank you for listening, and I'll catch you guys later.